watch the demonstration. All right, you're gonna, when you walk in the door on Monday of next week, so make sure you're here so that you can do this. So there'll be two things. There'll be the clay. There will also be visual, it'll be two-sided when you get it on Monday. It'll be visual demonstration of what I'm just about to do, and then a written out word for word demonstration of you for you to read for your guidance. There will be tan paper, not a canvas, on your table for you to work on top of, as well as some water and as well as a variety of tools. We are making textured pinch pots. Does anybody have an idea of what clay really is?
I think,
Or where it comes from?
I think it's like a molding tool.
Molding tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you can make sculptures out of it. Yes, Zach?
Like, oh, I forgot.
Okay, no problem. Michael?
Isn't it like something you find in water?
Okay, getting close, getting close. Seaweed. Brooklyn? Well, clay, where do you think it comes from? Where do you think we might find clay? Evan?
I would say, I'm pretty curious to be wrong, moss.
Moss? Okay. Jordan?
Jackson.
I didn't hear. Jackson, sorry.
So my best guess, because this is what I know from Minecraft, like I found, like I got clay pieces like underwater.
Okay, okay. One more guess and then I'm going to tell you.
I was gonna say underwater.
Underwater. Okay. Clay is essentially mud. It comes from the earth. Okay. The clay that we get, some ceramicists who like to go find their own clay, and there's all different types of clay, they go and they get all the impurities out of it. We buy it in boxes from the art supply company, and all the impurities are already out of it. I get bags of it, boxes of it, and it comes nice and neat. When it comes fresh off of the block, there would be no air bubbles in it. If there are air bubbles in it, you have to do something. If you see up there the wedging board and the other two over here, wedging is a process that ceramics artists do to get air bubbles out, and it's kind of like kneading dough, okay? When you get your block of clay on Monday, maybe this size, maybe a hair smaller, but about the size of a baseball, okay? What you want to do is you want to, as you see me doing, use your effort, and you're going to use your muscles, smack it into a ball the best that you can. If you have anything to say while we're working, please raise your hand, and I would love to answer your questions. Once you get it into the best ball possible, now like I said, on Monday, you're going to have 40 minutes. You're going to walk in, you're going to get it, you're going to have that entire class. Some of you, as I've had in the past, finish much earlier, okay? You'll just have some quiet free time while everybody else, some people work right up into that last 40 minutes. So you will have the entire class to work though. Can somebody please open the door for my friends that are coming in? Evan, question.
So would it be cheaper to make your own, or
Well, you have to know where you can find that stuff, and
it's not just, you can't just
no, because it's not just mud. It's like, I don't know the whole chemistry of it, to tell you the truth. You could talk to a scientist, but I'm not sure. Margot.
Isn't with clay, like to make it more easier to move, don't you put like water on it?
Well, when you get it, it has a certain amount of moisture in it, and that's what makes it most plastic, and that's what we call clay that is fresh and ready to move. It is at its most plastic state, and that's what you want it to be. If I let this sit out for a few hours, it's going to start to harden and dry. When it's hardening and drying, there still might be some moisture in it, but it starts to then become what we call leather hard, that I can no longer change the shape of the clay, but there's still moisture in it. Once you make something, it has to sit out for about a week's time for the moisture to completely evaporate out, okay? Because then I put it in what we call the kiln, which is the big oven that fires it for a bisque firing. Our kiln, and we only use low fire clay. There's other clays, bless you, that go up to about 2,400 degrees. I fire our kiln to about 1,900 degrees, so it's really, really hot, okay? Once it comes out of there, the chemical consistency of the clay has changed. It can no longer be turned back into a piece of mud. If I make this pinch pot and I let this ball sit on the shelf for 10 years and it's completely dry, 10 years later I can put it back into a bucket of clay and it will turn back into mud, okay? But after I've put it into the kiln one time, the chemical consistency of the clay has now changed, and it can no longer be turned back into mud. It's like a rock now. Again, a chemistry thing that I don't know the whole chemistry of clay. I just know the art side of clay. So once you get your ball of clay, you're going to use your hands to make your pinch pot. We are making a textured pinch pot. So we're gonna make the pinch pot, and then we're gonna talk about what you can do to make your textures. Once you have it, depending on if you're right-handed or left-handed, I am a right-handed person, okay? I'm gonna hold the ball of clay in my left hand. I'm gonna use my thumb to go down the center as best as I can, and as straight as I can. Now, if I go all the way to the bottom of the bowl, I'm not gonna have a bottom to my bowl. So you have to kind of pay attention to how deep your finger is going into the ball of your clay. If I go out to the bottom, like I said, you'll have a bottomless bowl. If that's what you're looking for, go for it. If you want a bottom to your bowl, don't put your finger through the bottom. Now, so I've put my finger pretty well down the center. If you put your finger a little too far to the left or the right, that's gonna put a little more clay on one side versus the other. Could be a very fun, abstracted looking pinch pot in the end, completely up to you, okay? That's the wonderful thing about handmade art. It doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Now what I wanna do is what? What do you think I'm going to do to make my pinch pot? Ella?
Maybe take the edges and keep them kind of like
I'm
pinching
going
softly.
to pinch. Excellent. What you want to do now is I'm not going to take and pinch, pinch, pinch really quickly and pushing my fingers and making large indents. I'm going to very evenly and consistently turn my pot, and with all 4 fingers on the outside and the thumb on the inside, starting down here at the bottom. Okay? If I start pinching all the way up here and have these nice thin walls and this very thick, heavy bottom, you're going to be in trouble. So this is why I'm telling you, you want to start down at the bottom. It's probably going to be the most tedious part, but very evenly and consistently, I'm applying pressure inside and outside, working on my pinch pot. Is it going to be made in 30 seconds? No. You're going to spend the time pinching your pinch pot. Now, I'm going to continue talking about the process while I'm working on my pinch pot. As you make it, like I said, when you're finished, you're going to put your first and last name on the bottom. Do you all hear me say first and last name? Yes. There's going to be 80-some pinch pots. I'm not going to sit and decipher everybody's initials. Write your first and last name. I also highly recommend to all of my students, high school and whatever grades make something in clay, to always write your year, not your grade, your year on it. And you don't need to write April, whatever, 2019. I just say to write the year, because I have things that I made in high school ceramics and college ceramics, and it's fun when you look back on them years and years later to say, oh my gosh, I made that when I was in 9th grade in high school, because you can remember from the grade. So it's kind of cool to be able to reference that. That doesn't seem like it's a big thing to you now, but I promise you, years down the road, it will be nice to look back and remember. Jackson, question.
Can I put like a nickname on mine?
I want your first and last name, okay? That's what I want to see on it, okay? As you see me working, you might see me dip my finger into a bucket of water, which you will also have. And I'm kind of, if you see it start to look like it has dry skin, you want to kind of stay on top of that so cracks don't start to form. As you're working with your clay, your hands will feel a little bit dry as well, so it happens. So again, as you make your pinch pot, you're going to put your name on it when you're done. You're going to put it on a tray. Give me 1 second, Evan. I'm going to have a whole bunch of trays back here for when you finish up. What happens to the clay then is, like I said, it sits out for about a week to let all of the moisture evaporate out of it. What do you think would happen to it if A, I put it into the kiln with air bubbles, or B, I put it into the kiln with water possibly still in it? What do you think might happen, Seth?
Explode.
It will explode. So if I have 80 pinch pots in there with air bubbles or water still in them, it would be a large disaster in my kiln to have to clean up when I'm done. So, hence the reason that it needs to sit out for a week to dry. I put it in the kiln. Can you reach that castle looking thing right up there?
Yeah, it's Holy Jackson.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Once it comes out of the kiln, do you see how when this dries, it will be a light gray, a very light gray, okay? Once it goes into the kiln and it comes out of the kiln, it's going to look like this. There is some glaze on it, but it's going to look almost white. This is now like a rock. I could tap it. If when this dries, I said when it's leather hard, you can no longer change the shape, but you can still work to carve into it. Once it's completely dry, that stage is called the bone dry stage, and it is the most fragile stage of clay. So if I did that tapping, very gentle tapping to a piece of bone dry clay, there's a very high percentage that it would break, okay? Alex, question?
How are we gonna get a name into it?
I'll tell you that in a minute when I get to that stage, okay? But yes, you will be able to. Ella, question?
Where is the kiln?
The kiln is in the closet back there, where it says kiln on there, on the door. See next to the,
I didn't actually know that. I read that before, but I didn't know there was
that is the kiln, and that's where it is. So, and you'll read in the directions, as you're pinching, pretty consistent my walls, still a little too thick. You don't want any walls to be thicker than like your finger, okay? If they're thicker than your finger, there's a really good chance that it's probably going to have air bubbles in it, okay? So we are trying to eliminate any chance. Do you see that I keep going back to make sure I'm working at my bottom, to make sure that the bottom of my pinch pot is not too thin, or not too thick, I'm sorry. Yes,
What if our fingers can't?
Jackson, please stop talking. This is good observation. So what if you're having a hard time getting your fingers down there? One of the reasons why I said that's the first and foremost place that you really need to make sure that you're working on first. Because if you start up here and your walls get too hard, it's really hard. So you might have to kind of figure out a way that you're gonna best be able to pinch it thinner, okay? Margot, question.
So I have decently long fingernails. Would that
You might have
affect
some,
it?
you might have some gouges in it, yes, but you can possibly, you know, if you have long fake nails, that might be a real problem. I think you should be okay with what you have on your fingers. Might make some gouges in it, but again, take a wet finger and just kind of rub those marks away. Evan, question?
Can you notice it if you feel for the moisture to put water on it? Can you feel it?
You can feel if it starts to get a little dry. You more will see the cracks versus feel them, because I mean, in a 40-minute class period, this isn't going to dry out that much. As a ceramics artist, if I'm working on something over the course of several hours or days, I have to keep it moist, put it in a bag and all that stuff. But since you guys are only working on it in one class period, you should be okay. Really just to wipe away any of the cracks. Go ahead.
And is it gonna have that like handle on it too? Or am I thinking of something else?
A handle?
You're thinking of a teacup.
No, not on the side, like on the top. You're thinking
We're not going to put anything additional. You're just making a little pinch pot to put a candy in, or girls want to put their jewelry in on their night table. Give it to your mom for Mother's Day. Well, you don't know if you have it back from the art show, but Angelo, question.
Is this only gonna take us like one class?
It's only going to take you one class because that's all the time that you're going to have.
Or you can like heat it up so it's hard?
Well, so you're going to make it on Monday. And then, like I said, it's going to sit for at least a week before it gets fired then. And we'll go back to our color wheel mandalas. Okay? And then after it's sat for a week, I have to do the firing of it, and I have to put it in the kiln. And once it gets fired, and that's like a 2-day process when I fire things. It takes about a whole day or so to heat up to temperature, and then a whole day to cool down. I usually do it on a Friday when I leave. And then over the weekend, it's an automated thing on the box. It tells it what temperature I want it to reach. And when it reaches that temperature, the box automatically shuts off the kiln. Okay? So then when I come in Monday morning, it's nice and cool. I take everything out, and then we'll talk about the next stages of what we're going to do with our pinch pots after that, okay? Michael, did I answer your question? No? Do you have a question or you don't?
Once it's in the, like after it's in the kiln and we take it home, is this gonna be able to drink from?
It depends on the glazes that you use, and most of the glazes that I do have are safe for food, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the glazing stage, okay? Ella, question.
Are we painting it?
We're going to do something called glazing it, as we're just talking about, and when we glaze it, okay, Ella has the floor, and we're talking, you should be listening. When we glaze it, the glaze is actually like it's liquid. These are all glazes up here. It's a liquid form of paint, kind of what you're going to put on it. But in the end, they're all chemicals in there, and they're powdered chemicals mixed with water, and you paint them on here. And then when they go in there, they kind of solidify and become glass. And that's what glaze, see like the black hand coil vessel up there? That's a black glaze and like a brown glaze. So there's different colors, and it comes out with the shine. It's like a liquid glass that you're putting on. Okay? And we'll talk more about that. So at this point, pretty good wall depth. I could pinch it a little bit more, but I want to quickly get on top of some of these dry marks. And as you work, it depends on which kind of direction you pull the walls. Some of your pinch pots might be a lot shorter and kind of wider. First time you're making a pinch pot, you might think it's gonna look like one thing, but in the end it might look completely different. And it's okay. It's the first time you might be making something like this, and it's more about the experience and learning the process and technique than anything else. You want to try and make sure your walls look fairly smooth, and you can do that, as you can see, by using your water. If you want a flat bottom, the next step to get your flat bottom is to take it and just kind of gently tap it. Give you a few other ideas. If you wanted to make your bowl something look like more this way, and your mom puts her kitchen sink sponge in there, you take it and you can tap it. So when I take it, I'm gonna tap mine flat.
Did you say softly?
Yeah, I'm doing it pretty softly. You have to be kind of aggressive with the clay a little bit, or it's not gonna do what you want, okay? So now I have my pinch pot. So now I want to think about the textures that I want to create. We are not using any words, anything. You're going to create, and like I said, I'll have a tray of a variety of tools on your table that you can use. You can use them in any way to push textures or line designs or whatever your heart desires into the outside and inside. And I'll hold it up in a minute.
Once if you aren't patient.
Say it again.
Once if you aren't patient.
You kind of have to have a little bit of patience. So there's just some dots, circles, and lines. Some of these other tools will create, It's going to be up to you really what you want to do with the textures that you want to create and how you're going to do it. You don't necessarily need to do anything on your bottom surface because you're obviously not going to see that, but you can do textures on both the outside and the inside. Alex, question?
So we're putting designs on it?
We're creating a textured pinch pot. So yes, you're going to use tools to create a variety of interesting textures, repeated patterns, whatever you want to call them, in whatever sort of random or not random kind of way that you want. Question?
Do we have to put designs in the middle?
If you want to leave the inside plain, that's fine. And just worry about the outside. Okay with that. I would highly think that the outside is the part that you want to really focus on. If you don't get to the inside, that is okay. Evan, question?
So that thing in like the bottom of the screen, how would you make those kinds of lines?
So it looks like they might have just taken, because you'll also, excuse me boys, I need to get into the tools real quick. And when I give you your tools for the day, I'll have these already just out. There's something called a needle tool, okay? And these are what, it's kind of like our pencil for clay, and this is what you could draw in with. So you could take a needle tool and kind of draw that design in. This is also what you're going to use to put your name on the bottom. Try to write it as neatly as possible. And again, thank you. Put the name, your year in it. I'm going to continue with just a variety of some of these green wooden tools. Have kind of a texture at the end as well.
Are these dishwasher safe?
Good question, Michael.
I kind of want to put food and drink.
Well, I hear you, but I wouldn't probably put these in the dishwasher. This would be something that I would hand wash at your sink, okay? Because when we do glaze these, boys, please listen. If you look at your bowls and plates at home that you use probably as your everyday wear, it's probably clay and it's probably glazed and all that good stuff. But when a professional artist glazes something, they have glaze all over the entire surface. And when we get to that stage, Mrs. James is going to tell you, we're not going to put glaze here, okay? Because it would stick to the shelf, and we'll talk more about that. So your name will be on the bottom, we put it on the shelf. If you were to put something like this in the washer repeatedly over and over, and water is exposed to the bisque area still, it could damage it over time. So anything you want, if you wanted to use food on it, possibly okay, but I would say this would be something that you would definitely want to hand wash at your sink. Seth, question?
Put soup in it.
I'm just saying, you could put anything in it. If you use a food-safe glaze, when we talk about those, I'll explain that to you a little bit more. I have mostly all food-safe glazes anyway, and any of the ones that I put out that you're gonna have the option to use are probably gonna be food-safe. So any of these tools will give you a variety of texture. Even on some of these little ones, there's a fun, like, kind of texture up here at the edge. You can use kind of anything that you want, anything that you can think of to create textures. You have something at home that you have, oh, I really like that texture, and you want to bring in to try and use, go for it. Corinne, question.
So you're teaching us today, and then we're doing it Monday.
So Monday when you walk in the door, bless you, you're gonna get right to work.
And then, when would we do the glazing?
We'll talk more about that then, because like I said, this has to dry for a whole week before I can even bisque fire it. Ella, question.
What our substitute's gonna be?
You're not going to have a substitute. I'm doing this for the substitute on Friday. I'm going to be here on, I'm here today and I'm going to be here on Monday. I'm not going to be here on Friday, so this is for the substitute on Friday. Jack,
You know,
are you listening or talking?
I'm helping him.
Okay, well, I want you to listen to other people's questions, because it might have a question that you might ask. And if he has a question, I want him to ask me. Go ahead, Jack.
can we use like those texture plates that we used for the portrait?
I love that thought, and I think that's a wonderful idea, although they're Mrs. Kelly's, and she has them back. She's using them for kindergarten, and I don't want to get them full of clay on her, because I don't think they'll be really easy to clean. So, great idea. If you have your own something sort of texture plate that you want to bring in, you don't care about it, but I don't want to get Mrs. Kelly's plates full of texture plates full of glaze, or clay, I'm sorry. Okay? So, again, when you're finished, your pot should look pretty smooth. After you do your textures, you could do a whole bunch of different textures all the way around, as you see me doing. I'm just kind of experimenting. Or you can do the same thing all the way around. It's up to you. Just sticking a tool in here to create something, whatever. You can have as much fun as you want. It's completely up to you. But in the end, the point of this is you are making a textured pinch pot, okay? So in the end, you're gonna have whatever textures you want on the outside, definitely. If you don't wanna put anything on the inside, perfectly fine. If you choose to, yes. No words. Not doing words, not doing pictures of things, just creating simple textures. When we go to glaze them, depending on how deep some of your textures are, the colors may come up more intense and interesting in terms of colors. So if you see this blue Nairobi color right here, this is kind of an idea of what it looks like. So where there's areas that are grooved in, the colors might be a little bit deeper versus what's raised up. So the textures will create some also interesting colors of, the textures in your pinch pot will create some interesting colors when you apply the great glazes. Angela, question? Not right now, sweetheart, in a minute, okay? Michael, question?
What do you mean by no pictures of things?
I don't want you to draw pictures of, like, SpongeBob.
No, but like, could I like make the whole cup like maybe an animal?
No, you're just gonna do a simple pinch pot, sweetie. Because, good observation, if you were to want to add eyes and things like that, there's a whole technique called slipping and scoring that I'm not teaching you about adding clay together. So,
I just want to like do cartoons, not like.
let's avoid it, okay? So in the end, like I said, once your pinch pot is completely finished, you're gonna put your name on the bottom. I'll have a bunch of green trays, like I said, back here, that when you're finished, you're gonna bring it back here. I will have an opportunity, I'll probably have one of the sinks or maybe both of the sinks full of water for you to rinse your hands off. You'll see clay is mud, so So you're gonna get your hands dirty, okay? So I will give you the opportunity to clean off your hands, clean up your area, clean up, you'll have tan paper that will have collected and all that stuff. Again, if you finish before everybody else is finished on Monday, you're gonna have some quiet, free time, okay? So you can start to think about now what you might want to be incorporating into the texture of your design on the outside. You know, I also probably have, excuse me one quick second. I have some stamps that I'll probably put out. I don't have a gazillion of them. Toothbrush also provides a very interesting texture on the outside.
I would brush your teeth with a toothbrush.
So, as you can see, there's a ton of different stuff that you'll be able to do with all the different tools. This one I kind of think if I went the opposite way and did the lines down here and dots at the top, it would kind of look like flowers in the end. So if something happily happens at the end that it kind of looks like something that you didn't really intend, that's okay. But I don't want us drawing pictures of SpongeBob or footballs or stars or hearts or things like that, okay? So a texture is okay. Intentional designs, try and avoid them. Are there any questions about what you're gonna do on Monday during class when you are making your textured pinch pot? Do you feel like I covered everything? Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah.
Questions?
After you put texture on, you
Yes.
shouldn't put water back on it.
Not really. If you put too much water and rub at it, your texture's gonna go away. But if you have some dry areas or little divots that you wanna fix, just do like one single finger. But if you were to take your hand and rub all over this again, yes, some of your textures could go away. Good question. Margo?
Are we just doing one design, or can we do what you did? Like
You can do a randomness if you want. Go for it. Because I think a lot of these tools do give you really cool, interesting patterns. But as you can see, most importantly, my wall is probably about the thickest that you would want your wall to be, okay? And if you see, I didn't keep working up here. That's one thing that I see often sometimes for first timers when they make pinch pots. They spend a lot of time pinching this lip of their pinch pot, and then it becomes really thin and it kind of breaks off. So do not spend a lot of time working on the lip of your pinch pot. You don't want it to get too thin and damaged and crack and break and all that good stuff. So make sure you stay on top of those, the dry skin looking areas. Any other questions? So you all feel very well prepared to be able to produce a textured pinch pot on Monday. Wonderful. Margo, can you push the stop button for me?